Hi, this is Melanie Achard. Thank you very much for joining me today. I've been in technology now for 30 plus years. I actually started out as a developer. I wrote firmware for an early startup in the 80s that was acquired by Digital Communication Associates, and then have since had a long career both in development as well as product management. And what I have learned from all of this is that, one, I really enjoy solving problems, whether it's by writing code or whether it is by helping somebody else be successful with code they've also written. And that's really what has kind of brought me into the SaaS world, and where I feel like product marketing and product management really have an incredible opportunity to take advantage of this new burgeoning SaaS environment, which has shortened our sales cycles and really allowed us to directly connect with our users to actually create companies and products that can grow very quickly and solve real problems. So for today, what I wanted to talk about was how you can take the ideas of development that I learned around Agile and apply those into marketing and actually have incredible benefits in order to accelerate growth predominantly, but also to increase sales just generally. So the order of topics I thought I would walk through today is first going through why I think that SaaS is so uniquely suited for this type of approach, then talking a little bit about some of the cornerstones of an Agile approach to marketing. First, knowing your users and your buyers. Secondly, leveraging both the user and the product to actually create sales and grow your company more quickly. And then making sure that you've built in the correct metrics and the feedback within the entire process so that just as we do in development in terms of continual development and process improvement, you can use that very same approach when you look at your marketing programs. So that's the general idea, and then I'll open it up for some questions around it. The first area that I wanted to kind of talk through is actually the difference between product management and product marketing. And I put out a poll question, which I haven't quite seen the answer to yet, to see how many of you are aware of what a product marketing person does, or if you have one in your organization. It's not a role that is well understood. And having worked both as a product manager and as a product marketer, I find that the two of them really complement each other very well. If you think about the product manager as kind of the captain on a ship, the one who's actually kind of plotting the course and keeping everybody moving forward, then the product marketer is like the co-pilot, the one who helps and works with him in order to drive the success of the product, both from a technical as well as from a marketing perspective. Now, they both are trying to do the very same thing, but they have slightly different goals and slightly different skill sets. So if the graphic that I have there, which those four areas, communication, technical expertise, messaging, positioning, and industry knowledge, those are really the four axes around which both product managers and product marketers typically work. So if you think about it, both product management and product marketing need to understand messaging and positioning, because this is really about collecting data, synthesizing it, and then coming up with, in product management's case, a compelling roadmap. But for product marketing, it's more about compelling positioning and messaging. How do you describe that problem? So they're both doing it. And then the same thing for industry knowledge. Product management needs that industry knowledge and understanding the competition to be able to identify which features are more likely to make the product more competitive, where is that product going, and again, making those types of roadmap decisions. The product marketing person, on the other hand, is using that industry knowledge in order to build content and deliver messages to the user that the user is ready to accept and will find as being relevant and valuable. Where the two roles are slightly different is actually around communication and technical expertise. You need both. The product marketer needs to have technical expertise to be able to do demos, create videos, create content that would be relevant for that audience. whereas obviously the product manager needs that technical expertise in order to communicate very effectively, both around technical decisions that need to be made as well as working within the development team. But on the communication side, those strengths flip. The product marketer becomes the one who's usually a little bit stronger with the actual external communication, because the product marketer needs to be able to take a message and then push that message into the mind of the user or the potential prospect. And you do this through pitching, through PowerPoints, through content. So it's this ability to really create and get that user to understand what that product does in a short, concise way that allows a product marketer to be very successful. So what do you think, what does a product marketer do? Well, they're obviously trying to figure out what the user needs and does. They need to understand the competition and the market. But the real thing that they're doing is this communication around crafting, targeting and messaging for that product and positioning it in the mind of the user in relationship to other potential products that are out in the market or other ways that they could solve that problem. So that's what a product marketer does. So when I come into why is product marketing, how do you use an agile approach to marketing within this frame? It's really about thinking about SaaS and understanding that in a SaaS model where the buyer and the user are very frequently the same individual, these SaaS products that most of us are really engaged with these days are ones where the person making that buying decision is likely going to be, if not the primary user, then one of the users of the product at that time. And it's a short sales cycle. You communicate with that user, you talk to them about your product, and they make a decision usually in a few seconds, minutes, as to whether or not they're going to try it or get more information about it, or whether they're going to move on. And if they decide to try it, typically they're going to make at least the initial buying decision, usually within the first week of when they're starting to look. So it's a very short sales cycle, unlike some of the larger enterprise sales cycles that could take months or years. And the nice thing about a SaaS product, because it is cloud delivered, you have the ability to build in a lot of instrumentation so that you can actually collect data and analyze as you're making changes or implementing programs to decide whether or not what you're doing is working, whether there's a different way that you could do it, and you can optimize in line, which is very much an agile way of looking at this. So when you come into, well, what does agile product marketing mean? It really is built around 4 general concepts. The first one is, even as a marketing person or product marketing person, you need to be providing value to the customer. Customers don't want to read marketing. I don't like to read marketing. They don't want to feel like they're being sold to. So you need to be able to communicate to them in a way that they want to engage with you and they perceive that what you're providing to them has some value. The second thing is you need to build programs that are short and very discrete. So just like you would do in a sprint, you want to have a campaign that is a very short timeline that's talking about that is really kind of testing 1 or 2 elements, and then you want to be collecting data on how those elements did to understand whether or not it's working, it's not working, should you pivot, could you optimize? And then based on the data that you're collecting, then make an inline course correction or run another sprint, if you will, tweak that program, run it out, test it again. So it's this very iterative, continual process improvement approach to marketing that can allow you to quickly refine and discover how to be successful selling whichever product you are trying to do. But the key to this entire approach is that you really need to know your user. Remember, the user and the buyer in our SaaS world is very much the same. So you need to understand everything you can about that individual. If you're doing a business, a B2B play, or even a B2C play, you need to understand, where does that user get their information? Do they read online blogs? Are they looking at magazines? Are they looking at social? Where do they get information about things? What do they do with their time? And this means not just time inside, what activities or recreational things they enjoy doing, which is also relevant sometimes, but also how do they spend their time at work? How much of their time is in a meeting or meetings? How much of their time is doing things that they consider to be not part of their core job? How much of their time is spent firefighting or troubleshooting? That can give you a real indication as to ways in which you can talk to that user about what they do that they will recognize and feel like you understand them. Also, how do they like to buy? Do they want to buy things online? Do they want to buy things with a credit card? Do they want to go through a PO process if it's a business? Understand what that looks like so that you can help, again, if you need to, provide information to enable and facilitate that. And if it's a technical product, what other technologies are they using? Are they also using an IDE? Are they working in a messaging platform? Do they use Outlook? Is it a Microsoft? What's the demographic in terms of their technology use? Because that's going to help you, one, figure out ways maybe that the product could support or better integrate within the technology that they currently use, but it will also help you understand the types of ways to communicate again with that user, because if it's a Microsoft user, they have one way of communicating. If it's an Apple user, it's a different way. So understanding their familiarity with technology and what types of technology can be relevant for that. And a lot of what you're trying to figure out is motivation. So as you get to understand this user, which really the best way to do it is honestly by talking or communicating directly with them and collecting the data yourself, you get to hear what problems are they really, what are they trying to solve? What keeps them awake at night? Listen to, if it's a B2B product, what frustrations on their job drive them crazy? Is it having to fill out the same form 5 times? Is it always feeling like they don't get to do what they want to be a programmer, but they can't program because they spend too much time chasing bugs? Whatever the problem or the frustration is, try to get them to really understand that, because that is the need that you can use when you're talking, in advertising or content or any of the other assets that you can describe that, again, will help them identify that you understand them. Also understand how they get past this frustration or this pain point today. It probably isn't another product. Most people deal with a lot of frustration day to day, and they don't even think that there's a tool or solution that could solve it. They may simply, I remember compliance. It used to be the way people did compliance reporting was simply by long Excel spreadsheets, and that was adequate for a lot of companies and still is. So understand if they have a way to do what they need to do without engaging with a product, or if there are other products that they're looking at. And what is that trigger event that would have them actually look to buy a product? Is it, let's take compliance again, is it that they talked to an auditor and they had an auditor explain to them that they were now liable for some fine or some governmental regulation? Did they not get a deal because they couldn't do it? Are they Are they going through a budget reduction and they need to improve productivity, but they can't add headcount? What is it that would get them to actually look for a solution to the problem that you're trying to solve? And then finally, and it's really important, especially for a business-to-business company, which is to think about that user who's going to make that buying decision. What is in it for them? We all want to be good workers and we want to solve problems faster and save the company money, but that may not be enough for me to want to go out and purchase a product. What would get that user to feel okay about recommending your product to the rest of their environment? So Is it because they want to be perceived as somebody who can solve problems independently, who has more technical expertise than everybody else? Do they want to position themselves for promotion? There are a lot of different types of internal motivations that can be very relevant as you're trying to get to understand your buyer. So when you think about the buyer, then that kind of tees up the next question, which is, how can the user actually, how can the marketing person provide value? And when we think about providing value, most of this is going to be really around content. But that content, if you know that user, can be really targeted to what that user wants to hear. You can show the user how to use the product better. You can offer the user ways that they can actually influence the product, whether it is participation in a beta program or a customer advocates board or some other way in which they can give their feedback and let the company know what they would like that product to become. You can share information on the industry around best practices or trends that are going on. You can even share information on current events if there happen to be shows, or I've worked with a company that would talk frequently about both events like when AWS goes down or something like that, and letting users know when they're letting them know first when that particular event occurred so they could start building better resiliency into their system. So there are a lot of different types of information that as a marketing person you can provide to a user that doesn't feel like marketing, but it's still one more opportunity for you to engage with that user. And most of this will be around content, whether that is creating blog articles or content on a website or videos or Twitter messages or anything like. Most of it is going to be around content, but if that content is targeted and if it feels authentic and it speaks to that user around problems that they're genuinely interested in a way that that user feels like you understand them, then that content will be perceived as providing value and it won't feel like marketing. And that's the key. One of the other tactics that you can use in terms of kind of driving up value are these in-group identifiers. And one of the greatest examples to me anyway was Tux, the Linux penguin. I don't know if any of you remember Tux, the Linux penguin. But for Linux developers, having items that had that penguin on it was really it was something that you wanted to do. Everybody in the office thought you were cool if you had a Linux penguin. So being able to create opportunities for a user to proudly display and feel like they're part of the in crowd because they have either a sticker or a penguin or a t-shirt or a cap or whatever it is with that branded item that they attach a lot of meaning to is very relevant and can be very useful in terms of providing value. It's amazing what you can get done at a show with a t-shirt. So the other thing that you can do is actually build communities, whether these are online communities where people can exchange ideas amongst themselves and talk to each other about the product as well as different problems that they're facing in their environment. It can also be face-to-face user groups or meetups, things like that. So those are ways in which marketing can provide value. But most of this, as I mentioned earlier, really gets into what is content marketing, because content is the way that SaaS companies typically really do provide that value to the user. So what you're trying to do is constantly re-engage with that user and provide this value. So marketing here, you're looking for opportunities to engage with them, and you want these opportunities to be really laser focused on that user, and you want them to be informative, and you really want them to be shareable, because if you can create this viral element around the content that you create, then you are amplifying your message into places you probably wouldn't usually get. So the way content is particularly valuable for a SaaS product, because unlike ads or other types of marketing tactics, content actually increases value, has a very long tail, and it continues to bring leads into your organization and create awareness for your product much longer than any other type of a marketing campaign. If you think about it, buying an ad on Google or doing search engine marketing, that only runs while you pay for it. Whereas once you publish that content out or you get it out into a forum, it can be shared, it can live for a long period of time. And as people are looking for that particular item, they can find it, which is really important. One other element about, and I mentioned this whole viral element, is to think about influencer marketing even as you're doing content marketing. And influencer marketing, not necessarily in the way that a lot of industries perceive it, but understand in B2B worlds especially, users usually they trust other users that they think are like them. So they will look to other users to help them solve problems. So they're going to ask for their opinions for these different peers. They're going to look to thought leaders and colleagues, maybe market analysis. So as you're developing content, getting other of these like thought leaders or influencers to be either redistributing or syndicating this content or amplifying it in their own channels is one easy and effective way to really start shaping customer behavior and building trust with potential customers in your product and basically increase sales. So I've been talking a lot about this idea of user-first messaging and the fact that you need to be really authentic with your user about what your product does. And that's the key element. You need to have a streamlined message of exactly what your product does. Every product really only does one thing. It can't be it does A, B, C, and D. It does one thing, and you need to be able to communicate it very quickly to those users for it to be picked up and for them to understand it. And you need to think about how you communicate it, because the way that you communicate it is also relevant. For some industries, having long form articles with lots of references makes it feel like it's very authoritative. For other industries, if you can't get that message across in a tweet, it's not going to work. So you need to think about how you communicate it, both in the form, but also in the tone. So my favorite examples of this are to look at Dropbox or Slack, where if you look at the Slack sign-up process, it is very informal. It asks you, so where do you work? What's your name? What do you do? Very informal questions rather than asking you to fill out your username, input your organization name. And those types of tone choices are also very relevant in terms of getting users to identify with your brand and identify with your product and how you solve it. And I mentioned this idea of influencer or viral marketing, but it's really important to think about getting shareable messages, because if you have a blog and you post it out, if it is something that is actually going to resonate with that user and solve a problem that user is interested in solving, there's a higher probability of that user sharing that blog on his own network. And that gets you, again, amplification to your message. So it's really important, again, to get this user-first messaging right. But the second element, which I love about a SaaS product, is that you can actually use the product to sell itself. So the more people if you think about it, if you can build a product like, say, Slack or Dropbox, where the more people who are using that product, the more valuable it becomes, that's a home run, because then users are going to be inherently inviting more people into that product environment. And the other way you can do this is to think about also integrating the product into the customer's work environment. So the company I work for right now, Solarwinds, the product that I'm working on, has got integrations into PagerDuty, GitHub, Slack, things like that. And that actually also builds in a network effect, because as they publish and are integrating this product into these different channels, it allows people in those channels not aware of that product to discover it. So think about the networking from that perspective of it. But you can also, as you're thinking about the product and this in the SaaS world, really focus on developing features and capabilities that would actually support the marketing side. So this goes back to the product manager and the product marketing person being two sides of the same coin. So if you can get your product to be in a place where it's easy to invite other users to join the product, as I'm sure I'll go back to Slack again, that's a great example where if you're using Slack, they encourage you in the product to go in and invite other users in your organization to participate in the Slack community. And you can also use the product, if it's not that type of a networking product, then build capabilities in your product that will bring the user back into it. So have maybe reports that are published out over email that might have a synopsis of everything they've done that month, or if it's a security product, how many viruses it was pulled out, or if it's a monitoring product, how many alerts were alleged, something like that, that would bring the product back, that bring the user back into the product to go in and get more details on it. You can also do it with text too, for alerts or things like that. But you also have the ability with the SaaS product to build a lot of instrumentation into the product to capture what the user is doing, and then be able to use that behavior to provide in-app messaging to encourage users to use more of the product, or maybe to upsell or more sell into that user as well. And the messages don't need to be salesy. They can simply be talking about a feature that in a way that the user might not be aware of. So again, trying to make it problem focused and make it very user focused, but drive more use of that product, because typically engagement is driven by use, and the more that you use the product, the more likely you are to either want to buy more of it or integrate it more deeply into your environment. So this kind of gets into this idea of free plans versus free trials. And a lot of SaaS products go down this route, whether or not we want to give the product away for free, whether we just want to have free trials. The key here really is, if you're going to do a free product, it can't compete with your paid product. You need to have value that is very differentiated between the paid version and then the free product. Now, it is perfectly, and it works wonderfully if you, for example, are solving one small problem with the free product, but then the paid product then solves 3 or 4 really big problems. And you can use the free product as a way to collect leads and then grow them into your paid product. But for that to work, you need to have it very well integrated with your sales process, so that as leads flow in, once they sign up for this free product, your sales or your marketing engine can kick in and start actively communicating with that user within the product as well as externally, to get them aware of what they don't have with the free version and get them to upgrade into the free trials or into the product. So that's the key in order to do the free product. For the trials are a wonderful tool for SaaS, but there is one thing to make them, for them to be successful, however, you need to have very clear value. It needs to be immediately available, because someone needs to see that value as soon as they sign up for that trial. It can't be hard to set up. They can't have to do too much in order to see what the product does. Now, if you have a very complicated product and you still want to do a trial experience, there are other ways you can get around it. You can use an online environment with where it's already set up and allow people to log in and see it through this online environment. But what you're not going to get out of that experience with the trial, what's nice about it, when they try it, especially if your product requires them to either do some, send a little data or communicate a little bit about themselves, you're starting to drive just stickiness so that the users are associating and solving a problem with your product, and they can start to see the value they're going to get out of it. And that will encourage them to stay along with it. So in a way, you want to have some engagement via the trial, some data may be being sent back and forth, but not so much that it's very hard for the user to do it. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. But the key really is for the user to recognize significant value almost immediately. So that's kind of the key in order to make that trial work. Now, I mentioned using the product as a way to sell the product with all this instrumentation and the viral aspect and engaging them with the free trial or a free product. But you can also use the users to sell the product. And this is really important. You can not only use the influencer idea, whereas users will talk amongst themselves and hopefully be sharing your content on their own forums. You can put user quotes up on your website, case studies, logos, hopefully maybe get a case study in an external blog area or something that will allow other users who are trying to solve that problem to identify with it. You can use ratings and reviews, and there are a couple of different ways you can do that. You can do it within, if you actually have it within your software or your app to allow the user to rate how they feel about it. You could also have it done in external forums. You can have it done via analyst, but reviews can be very powerful depending on where your user goes looking for information. And then you can have referral programs. And I love referral programs. And this kind of goes back to, well, the Slack idea that I was mentioning earlier, where you can invite other users in to your Slack channel, and it actually increases the value for the current user as well as the one that's coming in. But you can also do it, and Dropbox did a great program for this, where as you're uploading information in, if you refer somebody into Dropbox and they have an element built within the product where you can immediately send an invite either over Twitter or email, you can invite them in to using Dropbox and you get a discount. And they've had a lot of uptick in that. So using your user to reach out to other users in their network is a really powerful way to, again, grow your sales. But the key element to all of this really is building in this feedback loop into your marketing campaigns. So you need to have instrumentation all the way through it, from your website that's going to tell you where people are coming in to look for your product, what they searched on when they got there, all the way through your product to see what people are using or not using. And then you want to use that data as you're trying to craft your messages. So you're going to want to test everything and make one change at a time, not try to do too many changes at all. So if you're going to test a message, then you should change that message once, go in and test it, see if it worked. And if it does work, then continue forward. Then you're going to want to test the way in which that message was presented. It may be you had it with a certain format or a color or a style or a size, and you would test it again and see how that pulls. And then you want to get just enough data to get a decision. You don't need to wait for the whole thing. So if you'll see on the right, if you're looking at the slides, I'm showing some of this was actually a website change that we were testing to see if changing the color of a nav bar would make a difference. And it ironically did, but we saw that very quickly within about 2 weeks, and we're able to quickly move forward. And that's what you want to be able to do, is to have a hypothesis, to test it, and then being able to go back, make an assumption, go forward, and then test the next thing. And the key is not to try to make too many changes at one time. But for this all to work, you really need to have these metrics built in. You need to be looking at this all the time. So this is a very data-driven exercise where you're going to be looking not only at the types of metrics that I think every marketing person ever thinks about, How many leads did I get? How many visitors to my site? How many people signed up for the trial? All the way through how many people sent data or activated, purchased, etc. So the normal funnel. But you also want to be thinking about softer metrics. Measure customer engagement. And if you've instrumented the product accurately, you should be able to see how much of the product they're using, how long they're spending in the product. That helps you understand if they're getting value out of it, and will not only help the product manager make product decisions, but as a product marketing person, it helps you understand really what the product is being used for. So if your tool does monitoring, alerting, and then you find out that the only thing that your product, that where people are spending most of their time is on search, then you know that what customers are looking for really is search. So let's try a new marketing campaign around search rather than talking about monitoring, for example. So that's one key element. And the other thing is to think about softer metrics again, like net promoter scores, or would your customer recommend this? Some of the best value and data that I get out of these metrics is really digging into churn data or why people didn't sign up. So somebody signs up for a once they sign up, why they didn't actually use it. Somebody signs up for a trial, and then they actually never go and log back in. Why? What happened? How to send out surveys to try to figure that out, try to get them on the phone if possible, or engage directly over email to try to understand why they thought they wanted the product but never followed through again to sign up. And then the same thing for churn. Churn is one of the most useful pieces, one of the most useful metrics you can gauge, and it's a place where you can really dig into it and try to understand and correlate whether churn, use of a particular feature or not use of a feature, is more or less correlated with churn. So for example, again, in this monitoring company, we would note that people would be monitoring, let's say, at 10 gigs a month, 10 gigs a month, 10 gigs a month, and then 2 months before they would churn, it would suddenly walk down to 6 or 4 gigs, and then a month before they churned, it's down to 500K, and then they would churn. So, in a SaaS world, you're fighting for that customer every month. So what can you do when you start to see that after a month, suddenly they go from 10 to 6? Well, that should be an alert. That should let you know that this customer is either not seeing the value, evaluating a competitor. And so it's an opportunity for you to reach out and engage with that customer, either in the product or via a marketing program or sales, to understand what's going on, to see if there's something that you can do to help them find the value that they're looking for in the product, or make them aware of something they might not be, and kind of avert that churn before it gets there. Because with SaaS, more so than any other kind of environment, you're fighting for that customer month after month, and you want to make sure that you basically need to resell them every single month. So when I'm kind of coming and wrapping back up so that we have time for questions here, the Agile approach to product marketing really, again, is around providing value to that customer, usually around content that speaks to that customer in a voice that they can relate to, that's authoritative, and that they are looking for, that they find informative and get value out of. It requires that you really know your user well. And then you want to make guesses or hypotheses, both around the messaging, the positioning, or even the way in which you communicate, and then test those out and get data back, and use, based on that data, either move forward with that hypothesis or go back and revisit it and then start it all over again, and build in this feedback loop so that you are constantly adjusting to changes and in the customer behavior and customer needs as they go forward. So it's this continuous optimization that really allows this Agile approach to be successful. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go forward to the Q&A. Are there any questions at this point?
Hi, Melanie. Yes, a couple of questions that have come in. The first one coming in from Alan. Ask, can I kind of integrate or extrapolate the same process of Agile for products other than SaaS. So if I have to do the product marketing, and if I because it's he says that it's more of a process followed for inbound product management. But he says since you've brought it up, and he kind of understands why Agile is also useful for product marketing. A quick question is, can I use it for products other than SaaS?
Yes, no, you certainly can. I like SaaS simply because you have that built-in feedback loop and you can really make changes more quickly. If it's an off-the-shelf product, you can do the same thing. You should have the very same types, maybe not quite as much information as with the SaaS product. It's usually harder to build in that instrumentation, but you certainly would have the types of metrics, for example, on your website with your search engine optimizations or marketing or search terms that you could use to help drive and understand whether or not something was successful. So it is not simply limited to SaaS. I find that a SaaS product makes it easier and allows those feedback loops to be shorter so that you can make iterative changes and optimizations more quickly. But if it's an off-the-shelf product or even a consulting product, you can still build the very same types of techniques in, just lengthen the time frame.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. So the next question comes in from Amit. He asks, you mentioned how social products can market for themselves, but how do you think of marketing such products initially when they lack the mass and they need really the mass audience to become marketable? Like, right before we start off anything, how do I introduce them into the market and make them big?
Right, and that's always the hardest part. It's not that it's hard, it's the most exciting part. The key here, and I mentioned the influencers, this has worked for me in the past, which is, so if you have a new product and you're trying to bring it in and you want people to become aware of it, the old school way was to spend a lot of time and money advertising or really trying to, put information out there and hope that the user or the buyer is going to find that. However, if you can figure out who the influencers are in your community, let's say, and I'm going to go, I worked in a healthcare world, right? And what we learned in healthcare was that nurses, believe it or not, at least in the United States, are the ones that actually are the most aware of how things work within the hospital, have the most contact with patients, and have the most contact with doctors. So we were trying to introduce a new product marketed towards patients, but there was no easy way for us to make that patient aware of our challenge. But what we did learn was by going after nurses who were very key to this process, the nurse then would be our voice to the patient and allow the patient to become aware of the product. So this is the same technique used that I would suggest that you would use for a newer company, which is to try to find the person who your actual buyer is looking for information from, and then go after that individual. And usually what you'll find is there are not that many of them, at least in most industries I've been in so far. So they're pretty easy to approach. If it's an online community, you can use, get those influencers, educate that influencer around what you're doing, make them feel again like they've got some engagement with that product, and then assist that user in then promoting that product out to their own users. So it's a slow path, but it's exponential. You get one, then you'll have 10, then you'll have 100.
All right. So the next question is from Jignesh, and he is this is very respective to a particular slide that you shared regarding the metrics. And
Okay.
his question is, are the metrics for B2C and B2B different? Because he assumes that the metrics that you'd shown were B2C specific. So he'd like a
Actually, they were
clarification on
no,
that.
actually they were B2B specific, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it kind of depends. Everybody's metrics are going to be different. I shared the visual there, which was the funnel, and that's actually the one that I use right now. And I'm working in a DevOps role where I sell to developers, and so it's a B2B play. Um, But one of the key elements, if you'll notice, it's got obviously site visitors, trial signups, and then that, if you'll notice the other one, activations there. That's very key for me in my B2B play, because that's telling me that my developer has actually sent me data about his development environment, and that therefore he's engaged with my product, and he is a real prospect for me to try to show the value of the product to. So that one was a B2B. B2C
Okay.
products, for example, activation may not be relevant. If you're trying to sell a messaging app like Slack to a B2C, or Google Hangouts or something like that, it may not be, have they sent me data, but it may be how many contacts have they uploaded, or have they added, or how complete has their profile been filled out. So you're going to need to find the metrics that are going to show you that level of engagement. But they're pretty much the same, B2B or B2C.
Okay. Okay. This question has come in from Pallavi. So the question is, how soon do we measure end to end of the product, like everything in terms of metrics? Is it a weekly activity, or do I go with a monthly report, or how do I measure these metrics?
Oh, so if you're in a SaaS world, then there are some metrics I look at on a daily basis. There are others that I look at, it's really about volume. I want to have enough data for me to understand whether I'm having an impact. So on day-to-day changes, I'm frequently looking at trial signups. I know how many trials I should be driving every single day. And if I have one off day, okay, but if I have 2 or 3 in a row, I think that there may be something I'm missing. There might be either a technical issue with the product, an issue with the site. There might be a competitor that is somehow coming in and pulling people away from my site. Something has changed, and so I need to go look at it. And in terms of messaging, it's the same thing. If I put a message out on my website, I'm going to be looking at my Google Analytics to see how many people hit that message, and then look at my conversion rate from that message to a sign-up form. And that is probably something I'm looking at every week. On the other side, churn numbers are not usually ones that I see that frequently. Those are usually ones I'm looking at 2 weeks or a month out, because again, it's really hard if you have small numbers to be able to see trends. You need to have enough volume for that trend to be significant. So it really kind of depends on what the metric is.
Right. So I just take from that you first have to study the metrics properly before you study how well they're doing, right?
Right. You need
To,
to have a
right,
baseline. So yeah, and
right,
that's the
right,
first thing to do when you're starting out and you're launching that product for the first time, is you're going to get the website up there, and then you're going to need to let it sit and kind of settle in for 2 or 3 months, so that you can just start to see what are normal traffic patterns. And then you're going to be able to see changes off of that once you get, a little bit further into it.
right, right. The next question comes in from Rituraj, and the question is, do we have any data which quantifies the percentage use of Agile in product marketing? Like, how much of Agile do I use, and is there some industry standard, or has someone worked around these numbers? You know?
Actually, no, I actually have no idea if there's an industry standard, and I'm sorry to say that. I
Okay.
took Agile with me when I moved from development into obviously product management and then product marketing, simply because I thought that the principles behind it, this idea of short, discrete things that are testable, short sprints, being able to constantly prioritize around what you're going to work on based on what feedback you're getting in. All of those principles to me felt incredibly relevant. And it's something that I have brought now with me to different organizations that I have worked in. I'm not clear that there are people who are actually talking about it in the industry specifically yet. So I apologize. No, I'm not aware of any industry guidelines on this.
All right, cool. The next one is by Srinivas, and the question is, do you have any example of predictive analytics or machine learning built in for evaluating and predicting the success of future SaaS platforms?
So not so much success. There are predictive and some machine learning types of algorithms that I have helped product management instrument into the product that would predict whether that particular user, what other products or features that user would be a good candidate to receive, and or that would predict whether that particular user was going to be a user with a high lifetime customer value. But in terms of the overall success of a SaaS company, I've not seen it. I would love to see that. What I have seen is that it feels really complicated. You need to have the product be successful. It needs to be the right product, right time. The message needs to be successful. And then you need to have really good management. So I'm not sure of an algorithm yet that takes into all three of those, but I would love to see it if somebody has one.
Okay. The next one is, as a product manager, what is the most critical job in Agile? By Sukrupa. So, if that makes the most critical part of Agile as a product manager.
It's prioritization. That is the most critical job, because every day is a resource and an opportunity. And if that day is not focused on what will actually move the needle, you're losing that opportunity. And that's the same thing for making sure that as the product owner, keeping the entire team focused on delivering what will actually help that product to be successful on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's the key thing that a product manager needs to do.
Okay, can we take about 2, 3 more questions, or are we pressed for
Sure.
time?
No, I'm fine.
All right, so the next one comes in from, sorry, I can get the person's name. It's, how can one transition from a product manager to a product marketing manager? And this should be, I think, more on the lines of your SaaS products. This is from Zafar Sawant. How can one transition from product manager to a product marketing manager?
Actually, it's usually a pretty easy transition.
Mhm.
It's about finding, and if it's in the same company, then you want to have another product manager that you can complement. So in order to transition, the element that you would need to develop as a product marketing person is actually the ability to communicate. And this doesn't necessarily mean verbally communicate. It really means being able to craft really discrete, targeted messages in a way that people can understand and want to consume. So it's this idea of storytelling. If you can tell a good story in about 60 seconds about what your product does and why users would be incredibly lucky to be able to experience your product, then you're ready to be a product marketing person. Fundamentally, there's no difference between a product manager and a product marketer other than that one element. So that's what it would take to go forward. In terms of a career transition, it's actually pretty easy career-wise to do it. You usually just need to find an organization looking for a product marketing person, or better yet, go to your organization and help them understand why they don't have a good product marketing person, and you can help.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Just one last question, and this comes in from Sachin Sood. Um, why do great companies making great money kill their best performing products? And he's given a very interesting example of a perfume, right? And why he says that a lot of software companies and product companies do this, even in the tech space. He's given an example of the perfume called as Bulgari's Aquamara, and he says that, though it was doing really well, the company called it back and they introduced something different. And this, he says, is also being followed by a couple of companies, including Cisco, where they've pulled off their best performing products and they've introduced a newer product in the market.
Yeah, it's a big risk. That's a huge risk. He's right. I've seen it repeatedly where you take a really well understood, people love it product, and then you decide you can make it better. And so you then introduce something that's supposed to be better, and the users don't find it better. Honestly, this is a big mistake. You need to understand, it goes back to the user. If the user loves your product, they know what the user loves about the product. Maybe that's all they want. Maybe they don't want anything. Maybe they want to smell like aquamarine. Great, then keep aquamarine. Don't try to anticipate what your user would want. Oh, they would like it better if it had X. Actually ask the user. So this to me is a data problem. if they had run the data and gotten the information and talked to their users, they would have probably identified that those were not great decisions. So again, talk to your user, understand them, and then make decisions about whether or not you add a feature or go in a different direction or version based on what the users actually tell you and not what you think the users want.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I think that settles that. And then this question, the last one, I think, is it right to say that product managers or owners work with Scrum or Kanban teams while product managers work more with DevOps teams? So
Can you
you,
say that? Can you repeat that one more time for me?
yeah,
That
I think there's
I got that.
slight confusion there. So there's product owners versus product management
Oh, okay.
marketers. So product owners work more with Scrum and Kanban, and product managers, that means I'm thinking is product marketers, work more with the DevOps team. So if the question makes sense now.
It's funny. So as a product manager, I worked with both. So I was both the product manager and product owner at the same time. Um, and in that environment, it was not a DevOps product. It was a straight up, almost not quite waterfall, but close type of a process that was being done there. That's an interesting question. Product owner is definitely not a concept that you would find in a product marketing person. Product marketer is not going to think of themselves as the product owner. They may think of themselves as the business owner, however. And I think the product manager may think of themselves as the product owner. So again, that kind of goes back to these two sides of the same coin and the two of them working together in order to drive the product to success. Does that make sense, Bibin?
Yeah, makes sense, makes sense. Right. So Melanie, you have to do me a small favor here because I'm actually a little confused with a couple of questions. You'll have to pick the question that you like the best because we give out the book that you recommended, From Impossible to Inevitable by Aaron
Oh,
Ross.
no.
So yes, I'm leaving it out to you to pick up the question that you thought was thought-provoking. So we can give up that book.
Yeah, no, I really liked the question around why do certain companies introduce a new version or a new capability of their product and it kills the old product. So
Okay,
I thought that
that
was a
makes
very
sense.
interesting question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So Sachin Sood, he gets the book for today. Congrats, Sachin, on that. Good question there. And like I said, because we had not introduced and we had a small technical glitch, I think we come to the end of the webinar here. Thank you so much, Melanie, for this particular session. And I was also kind of confused because I work as a product manager as well. Not too familiar with the SaaS products though, right? I'm more on the other consumer line, so it's more the offline products I'm familiar with. So yeah, quite an interesting approach of using agile in product marketing because I always thought agile wasn't the inbound product management or the product owner part. While having said that, yeah, so here we are with the other events that we have coming soon for on the December 14th and 15th at the Sterling's Mac Hotel in Bangalore is the Product Leaders Forum. They're having a joint summit where product leaders across this country, particularly in Bangalore, will be getting together for a 2-day session. It's powered by NASCOM and by the Institute of Product Leadership. While having said that, the next in the webinar series is on the 7th of, sorry for that, yeah, so it's the 7th of December 2018, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's on product marketing, how technology is exploding the role and impact of B2B product marketers. So stay tuned for that, guys, and you can register on the link. The team will share the link shortly with you in the screen below on the chat. Please make sure you guys register for it. Also closing soon is the Executive MBA in Product Leadership in Pune. We're closing in the application, so people who would like to check out this, please get in touch with the team here or just visit our website, productleadership.com/EMBA. So it's happening in Pune. And yeah, follow us on LinkedIn for more such updates and more such sessions. We have info sessions coming in as well, a lot of events. Follow our Twitter handle at ProdLeader and our website, like I mentioned earlier, www.productleadership.com. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much, Melanie, for coming in today to speak about this. And we choose to host you maybe once again later in the year so that we'll probably talk about something in detail on SaaS products. Thank
That'd
you
be
so much
great.
for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Take care. Thank you so much, guys. Stay tuned for the next session. That's on the 7th of December. Good night.